season, week number 2 is in the books. What NFL analyst said, quote, the Broncos are a guarantee to not reach the Super Bowl? And what is the significance of another week littered with knee injuries? You're watching the NFL Goal Line Live with Andrew Goldstein and your host, Nick Rice. Hello and welcome inside the NFL Goal Line Live studios. Yet another edition led by your host, Nick Rice. I'm joined alongside Andrew Goldstein. And Andrew, week number 2 is in the books, and we have some big-time news across the National Football League. Most intriguing is obviously a message that we'll get to later on from the city of Denver. But first off, news that really, in my mind, for a while seemed to be under the radar more than I believe should have. Dustin Keller getting upended and injures his ACL out for the season. I think that's a huge injury on that Dolphins squad for a team that ranked in the bottom 10 as far as pass offense, despite Ryan Tannehill having a very nice season. Your thoughts on Dustin Keller, tight end formerly by the New York Jets, now on the injury report and no longer part of that Dolphins squad?
Well, I can't help but feel bad for Dustin Keller. I mean, he was an asset on the Jets. Nobody realized it because Mark Sanchez was, well, you know, let's not be kind. Mark Sanchez was horrible, but nobody realized how good of a tight end Dustin Keller was. He's very good in the pass-catching game, not so much a blocker, but very precise route runner. And I feel like this injury is really going to affect the Dolphins. Nobody realizes it.
And we also look at other injuries around the National Football League, including a man that I was becoming a fan of last season, Denario Alexander. He injures his ACL as well. And we just take a look at the injury report, and it seems to be littered with ACLs the last few years. And the issue is, as far as the National Football League is concerned, is they seem to trade one injury with another. The issue a few years ago was that the concussions and the brain injuries and at the very latest, the Junior Seau situation seemed to spark this new idea of trying to eliminate those kind of injuries, but it just sparked up a new sort of problem as far as knee and leg problems are concerned. And we've seen that rise on ACL injuries along with just leg problems that NFL players have had. From toe injuries to we had a sprained ankle to a very good player for the Giants, Victor Cruz, bruised heel. We're just seeing an increase in injuries based off of this new rule change. I don't know if you're a fan of this, Andrew, but in my mind, I think this is good for the league, even though the league does have a problem on its hands, but a good problem as far as...
What's the rule change, just for our listeners?
Well, I mean, the rule change is that you can no longer hit above the shoulders. We aren't going to see any more of the Palomalus or the Ed Reeds take a lunge right to the face mask. We're not going to see a lot more head injuries anymore. We haven't seen any huge concussions that have been huge issues without some sort of a fine or a punishment. But now we're seeing an increase in leg injuries because NFL players, including defenders, are saying, shoot, we got to start aiming lower when the Texan defensive back, I forget his name, is about 60 pounds shorter than Dustin Keller. The only way you're going to get that big man down is if you go low, and that time, it just ruined the tight end season.
Well, I mean, there are different degrees of going low on a player. I mean, using leverage and hitting him kind of on the hip and driving through is one thing. That's what you're supposed to do. But just upending the guy and taking out and like sweeping the leg like it's the Karate Kid is something else. Mm-hmm. I mean, I still feel like even though we've seen a rash of leg injuries in the preseason, concussions are still the NFL's main problem. There's a lot you can do for legs. They have, you know, I don't know if you saw this in the news a couple of years ago, but they started taking the tendons out of cadavers and putting them back into people's ACLs and whatnot to get them to heal quicker. They have the anti-gravity treadmills now. You can risk a leg. You can operate on the leg with a lot more freedom than you can the head or the brain. And the leg is also going to heal a lot faster than will the brain. So I feel like despite the rash of injuries, the rash of torn ACLs that we've seen in the preseason, I feel like it's just an anomaly. It's going to go back towards the mean very soon, and I feel like concussions are going to reemerge as the league's big problem.
Well, why do you think that concussions will be the problem with the new rule change?
Look, the new rule change isn't going to change the fact that people's heads are going to get hit all the time, especially on the offensive and defensive lines when you're taking contact every single play. And last time I checked, nobody's filing a lawsuit for the league, like a lawsuit against the NFL over leg injuries. You know, it's over head injuries, and
Right.
there are hundreds of former players saying that the team doctors kind of swept concussion tests under the rug. So leg injuries definitely a problem, but there's a lot you can do for that. The NFL has already done a considerable amount by removing AstroTurf, employing the aforementioned experimental procedures on people's ACLs. There's just so much more you could do to bring a leg back than you could to bring a brain back.
Absolutely, and actually, one interesting point I do want to add is that we've seen a resurgence, or obviously, I mean, this hasn't been a huge part of the game until recently, but we have seen an increase in the passing game over the last decade. I mean, hands down, this has become a passing league by far more than a running league, and because of that, we're seeing, you mentioned offensive and defensive linemen bashing heads play after play, but we may start to see resurgence in that area of the National Football League as well, because we're no longer seeing the big guys, the William Perrys and the Albert Hainsworths, the 350-pound plus guys, as new NFL linemen seem to be a little bit more leaner, and obviously that's healthier for them. I mean, being 350, who wants to be 350 pounds? I mean, that's not good for anybody, let alone an NFL player. But the thing with this new passing game is what may become the norm is lighter players, is lighter offensive linemen, where a 350-pound offensive lineman in that Patriot offense that's running no huddle, you're going snap, snap, play after play, running back to the line, conditioning. They're going to need lighter players for that, and it looks like the NFL is beginning to switch into that mold where you need guys, including athletic guards and tackles, to run that read option where your guard is pulling a lot more often than in the past where you're just slamming it up the middle on a run. I think that the NFL, sure, the head injury situation still is prominent, but I think the fact that we're getting leaner linemen along with very strict rule changes, I don't know if exactly the leg injuries will dissipate, but I don't think we will see the head injuries come back as quickly as many would believe.
Well, I feel like even if we don't see the 350, 360-pound behemoths as frequently as we used to, the offensive linemen are still going to be over 300 pounds, most likely. I mean, the best pulling guard of all time was Alan Faneca, the Steelers and the Jets, and he was 315 for most of his career. So, and to be quite honest, I'm not sure what players' weight has to do with this. I feel like concussions are still going to be the league's main issue.
I mean, obviously, it just seems to be one of those many trends, though, by the way. Obviously, there was a scare last year that the officials would ruin the game, and then even years before that, when we had the lockout, it just seems sometimes there's just those trends and those scares about. I mean, this has become the new norm for this year, where we've seen a huge amount of ACL tears. It's one out of every 2 or 3 guys, seemingly, on the injury report, an ACL tear out for the year. I mean, just a devastating blow to the Dolphins. And, I mean, obviously, with concussions, you're back in a couple weeks, but you did mention, Andrew, it could be a lifelong sentence as far as that sort of an injury. As far as an ACL, maximum, you're out for 6, 7, 8 months if you rehab and train properly. May not be back to the level of AP, but you do indeed have technology where you can be right back to seemingly full form in just a few solid months.
Well, there's something you actually brought up, I think about 30, 40 seconds ago that it's kind of one of my favorite rants of mine. I just want to briefly touch on it. You said that people were concerned that the NFL and the referees were taking too much of the hitting out of the game. And I heard a couple people complain after the no shoulders or head rule for running backs. You know, you have old-time 70s football players and columnists saying that they were turning it into flag football and all the rest of it. I'm sure you've heard it too.
That was the big scare on the NFL, for sure.
Exactly, but you can't say, oh, we're turning this into flag football, it's not a real man's game anymore. You can't say that and then turn around and accuse the NFL of not doing anything about concussions. And I'm not saying you have, I'm just saying I've seen a lot of people who have done it. You can't have it both ways. You can't have your cake and eat it too. You have to pick one side or the other. Do you not want them to enforce these regulations, or do you?
See, those are the guys living in the past. It seems like the ones that they're never happy with the National Football League. They just need to calm down, and obviously they just need to take it 3,000 feet in the air, take a wide perspective of things, because the NFL is such a brutal sport that's getting faster all the time that the rules of the past are not relevant anymore, because this is just a different game. With the fact that 30 years ago there just wasn't as much impact from the NFL, where now it is such a big sport. It is America's game now, that there's all of these impacted over the years, brain injuries and stuff like that, that not doing anything about it could ruin one of the greatest businesses in America, which is football. I mean, hands down, it's just a fantastic game, but you're going to have these scares where it comes to, hey, might want to take a little look at these concussions and these head injuries, and then we have a different crowd saying, look, this is turning into flag football. I mean, the NFL is a multi-billion-dollar business with many smart people, many suit and tie guys that know a thing or two about creating one of the greatest businesses in the United States. I think the NFL is doing a pretty nice job as far as keep maintaining a fantastic game. It's professional football.
Right. Well, actually, on that note, I want to shift gears to another topic that has been present throughout the league's history, but is getting some attention recently, and that is PEDs. Von Miller, as you probably heard, gets a 6-game ban for testing positive for illegal substances. What's the first thing you thought when you heard this story? What was your initial reaction?
Well, we're just a bunch of amateurs here on the NFL Gold Line Live, so we'll go to a Broncos expert. It's the voice of the Denver Broncos, Ed McCaffrey, on the Von Miller situation.
Dude, Broncos, let's talk about being a contender. How is this defense really situated right now? How much trouble are they in?
Well, a month ago, before camp started, you look on paper, you see how they picked up Les Welker, they picked up Louis Vasquez, they picked up Sean Phillips. They already had a team that arguably many people thought should have won the Super Bowl last year. Peyton Manning's playing at a high level, but it just doesn't feel right here in Denver. Too many things are going wrong. It starts with Von Miller. I mean, you losing him for 6 weeks, if that's the case, is pretty devastating. Doesn't mean the team's not going to be able to win some games, but it will definitely affect, I think, their production on the field.
So that's Ed McCaffrey, voice of the Denver Broncos, and it just seems to me that I agree with what he's saying as far as Elvis Dumervil just getting faxed out of that with a weird contract situation. And then Von Miller. We don't even need to look anywhere else. I mean, Champ Bailey's dealing with injuries. We have issues with Dan Copen out for the season as well, ACL tear. Just the injuries, the problems that they've had in the last month in Denver. And it just seems to me that this isn't the same team. I mean, Von Miller and Elvis Dumervil, that was 2 sacks a game for this ball club. And they're out of the lineup. I think that this is a much bigger concern for the Broncos, where they really don't have much of a replacement. Who are they going for? Apparently, Either they'll go with the free agent acquisition, Sean Phillips. There's Nate Irving. They drafted a guy in the first round, I believe, or second, Sylvester Williams. But there just isn't a replacement that is clear-cut that can give anywhere near the production as one of the greatest sack leaders in the NFL the last couple years in Von Miller.
Well, I feel like they might rely on a guy like Derek Wolfe to step up. I feel like maybe he's ready to at least try and step into that role. But that in no way kind of makes up for Von Miller's production. And also, I'd like to ask the question, who is going to cover anybody on this Denver defense? Certainly not Champ Bailey. I can't spot a single guy who could match up with a Calvin Johnson, a Larry Fitzgerald, one of the elite receivers in the league.
The Broncos are hoping that Chris Harris, in his fourth season for the Broncos, may step up to be that guy. But then again, there isn't much depth at all at corner. And then as far as safety, that's an average unit there as well. I mean, they do have some pretty nice guys at linebacker led by Wesley Woodyard. But that defense, without Von Miller and without Elvis Dumervil, that's the equivalent of taking out Dwight Freeney and Robert Mathis from the Colts a couple years ago. This is a much different Denver team. And just ask the voice of the Broncos, along with that last exhibition game, the pummeling in Seattle, 40-10. There was no depth on the Broncos defense, giving up a 40-burger. Sure, the Seahawks are good on both sides of the ball, but it just is a huge issue. Too many things are going wrong with Denver, who just a month ago seemed to be a Super Bowl contending team.
Well, I'd actually like to talk about the Von Miller's test results, because this raises a question that's almost as interesting as will the Broncos contend without him, which is, does the NFL have a PED problem? Do you think so?
The NFL, certainly there's a lot of cheating and scandals going on, but in some cases it seems to be the case in every sport where, you see a guy, this hits at home to a lot of different people. This is one of a lot of scenarios where you see guys. Let's take a look at The Blind Side, where a guy like Michael Orr, just in a terrible situation, their only way out is to, obviously that guy was physically gifted, but when you're in situations like that, sometimes football is your lone way out, and the mantra, if you're not cheating, you're not trying. It's a shame, but when we're looking at PEDs, it's a huge scenario for the NFL where for a lot of the players that made it to the game, their love of their life, PEDs and different drugs were the only way for these players to get there. I don't know if you agree with that situation, Andrew, but it just seems to me that PEDs may be a bigger and more lingering issue than many people take credit for.
Well, I feel like it's a big issue, not just PEDs, but the Players Union actually just this year, a full, 8-9 years removed from the Mitchell Report in baseball, the Players Union of the NFL is just now agreeing to HGH testing for the players. Do you think that when the first tests are instituted, when the results come back, there are going to be some bombshells?
That's a very, very likely scenario. There was a report earlier on in the month where they interviewed a former NFL player who had, I think it was Trent Dilfer on The Herd with Colin Cowherd. By the way, I'm a huge fan of that. Catch that tomorrow morning on ESPN. I think it's ESPN 3. But there was a report that Trent Dilfer said that there's a lot more PEDs or a lot more some sort of drugs that performance enhancing for these NFL players than you may believe. And he said it was something in the neighborhood of 50 to 75% are using drugs. Now that can be in a variety of ways, as little as like a NyQuil or like a something that helps you sleep or that helps you get your energy. But there are a lot more players than we probably expect that do indeed use some form of drugs And how will the NFL, if indeed these tests show a lot more positives than we first expected, how is the NFL going to handle this situation? You can't just suspend the entire league when this just now is starting to become tested.
Well, first of all, I feel like the NFL should offer a kind of come clean program where they say, all right, anybody who has taken PEDs in the past and would like to just come out right in the next 7 or 8 days and admit it, will go with no penalty. We just want to know, obviously, if you do it again, we'll move you up to phase 2 of whatever our plan is, and we're going to come down on you then. But if you just admit it within this 7-day window, we'll let you go clean. That way, I feel like the NFL can get all of its skeletons out of the closet. We'll see exactly how many players are using PEDs, but the NFL won't have to suspend the whole league. Plus, it'll also serve to put the players on notice that it's not going to be tolerated in the future. Actually, this was true last season. I don't know if this has changed with the new HGH testing agreements, but in the NFL, you do not actually have to say what you tested positive for. So I'm sure you can remember at the end of last year, there was a small outbreak of Adderall suspensions. Brandon Browner and Richard Sherman at the Seahawks being the most high-profile cases. Those may not have been Adderall. You don't have to say what it actually was. So they could have tested positive for anything and just said, "Oh yeah, it was just Adderall."
Right. And the other thing is, that there are certain tests, such as the HGH and other things like that, where you can test positive on one count if you just right before the test indulge yourself in water. There's different levels. It doesn't have to be exactly the same drug or exactly the situation that many believe to be true. It may just be that sort of scenario. But one thing I want to touch on real quick, Andrew, I don't know if you this was a very smart proposition, I believe. I think the NFL would definitely go a long way in giving a come clear policy where for the rest of the preseason, just let us know. There will be no penalty. Just let us see how many players are taking this, where you can come clean, no penalty. You can still do exactly what you're doing. But the one negative as far as that policy may go, but this testing also comes with this sort of penalty as well. We may see a decrease as far as the potential and the level of play, especially in the first few games following no more drug use. I mean, as sad as it is, if many players aren't taking drugs anymore, we may see a huge decline in play out of these players. I mean, do you think that this would be a huge issue that the NFL would have a huge problem with in the next few years?
Well, I feel like if everybody's play is declining in relative to each other, I mean, let's not forget, these like PEDs and HGH, they're not going to take me to the NFL. They're not going to turn me into a running back or a linebacker. It's meant to supplement the athletic ability that exists already. It's kind of a proportional effect. At least that's how I've heard it described. But you bring up a fantastic point, and I feel like that's where we as fans have to do a little bit of soul searching. We have to ask ourselves, are we okay with this trade-off? Do we really value seeing the game quote-unquote clean or purified if it means it's not as entertaining for us? Are we really okay with the NFL cracking down on concussions if it's not as entertaining for us? I feel like before fans can really criticize the people making these decisions, they have to ask the question of themselves, what are they okay with? Do I really care about this?
See, that's the problem with society, though, Andrew. And that's really what really concerns me in the next few years. And the NFL seems to always have a problem on their hands because society is, to be quite honest with you, it's a shame sometimes on how this society is run, how America it seems to be more now with the new technology and all the this new age of just immediate documentation. I mean, it seems to me Riley Cooper was just the latest situation of a bunch of I gotcha. As soon as there's any sort of a report that comes out, it seems to be just like an I gotcha. It's similar to Aaron Hernandez when there was a little letter that was spilled out, and Aaron Hernandez gave it to a well-trusted friend, a letter explaining all of his thoughts and why he's now in jail and his fallout with the Patriots, saying, I don't want this sent out, but he said things such as, the Patriots and the league in a way kind of screwed me up. I didn't handle my situation well, but I just seemed to be screwed by the league. And then the very next day, that message is leaked, and it just seems to be like an I gotcha. Similar situation here. Do we really want a clean league?
Just to clarify, you're saying that the letter, like the leaking of the letter, was kind of an I gotcha.
Yeah.
The arresting of Aaron Hernandez.
It's sad. As soon as we see something, it just seems to be like we are set to document that. It's almost like as if. This is a situation I hope doesn't happen more than on occasion, but there was apparently, again, I'm getting these facts from Colin Coward's The Herd, but there seems to be times where it's as if like a cop, when he's filing a huge arrest, let's post that on Instagram, or different sort of situations like that, where it seems to be more we're no longer just enjoying life as it is, or enjoying the game as it is. We always seem to be like an I gotcha. You're in trouble. Okay, I gotcha. Like there's, I finally, like, it's almost like an accomplishment for people where they finally say, hey, look, you're in trouble. I'm not. I win, you lose. And in the end, we all lose if this situation seems to be passed, because, frankly, this is a way out for many people to become football players. And if this is, that's their decision. And sure, it's a shame that players that are clean are beaten out by players that are using these kind of drugs. But I don't think we want a clean league. It'll just ruin the game.
Well, I'm kind of in agreement with you. Personally, I'm not that offended by HGH, and I'm not as outraged by PEDs as everybody else is. Put it to you this way. If everybody has access to it, if everybody can take them, is it really an unfair advantage anymore? If it's okay to use new medical procedures and put cadavers' tendons into your leg to help it heal faster, that's a competitive advantage. You're not using your own body's regenerative powers, you're supplementing it. So we have to ask ourselves, what level of outside help or what level of supplementation are we okay with? Because we don't have a definitive answer on that. We likely never will, but I'd at least like the sports viewing population in general to try.
Yeah, and also one more issue as far as this. Can we really catch everyone who's using different drugs and steroids and other performance-enhancing drugs? Is there any way we can really catch everyone? So I don't think we should even risk trying to get testing, trying to come clean, trying to use all these different ideas when, frankly, there's no way to catch every single person. In the meantime, we have much more pressing issues.
And you said there's no way to catch every single person. Before we even get there, we have to answer the question, like we were saying, do we want to catch any person?
I honestly think this is a situation that it's far too ridiculous to even... The NFL can spend more of their time trying to create more technology in helmets, trying to improve the game in a safety way far before they even worry about this sort of thing. This situation, or as far as debate goes, we seem to do a pretty nice job of going back and forth, me and Andrew, but you can catch more of us in just a little bit. We're going to take a quick game break. Be right back to the NFL Goal Line Live with Nick and Andrew, live from Spreaker.com. Stay tuned.
Your presentation
presentation of National Sports is brought to you by Spreaker.com. Broadcast and listen to news, radio, and music with one low monthly rate. This show will be right back after this word from the local stations. You can contact National Sports in a number of ways, through Instagram, Facebook, and Twitter with the label National Sports. We love to have you guys a part of our show and can easily join us also through text or call. You're listening to the National Sports radio station on Spreaker.com. Welcome back to the NFL Goal Line Live with Nick Rice and Andrew Goldstein. Thank you guys for joining us. We also have a call-in number. I got to this point without even letting you guys know that our call-in number. Make sure to catch us at 951-515-4552. Leave your comments also in the Spreaker.com inbox as well. And we'll make sure to answer whatever questions you have whenever we get them. And obviously,
first commercial, that was awesome. I gotta make one of those.
And then if you guys want to, if you guys are broadcasters, obviously people that are listening to this are huge NFL fans. If you guys have any, if you guys want your presentation to sound like that, obviously just let me know and I'll definitely get that going for you. But thank you guys for joining us on NFL Goal Line Live. We are continuing on this show. And we are going to touch a very interesting topic we can go far in depth on, and we just might do that on the NFL Goal Line Live. Andrew, do you have a fantasy team?
I do. I had 4 of them last year. I'm cutting down to 3 this year. Actually, this is a topic that I talked at length about on my last show at AM Sports Live, which I recorded on Monday. And by the way, quick tangent, listeners, you should definitely check that out. It was probably one of the best shows that AM Sports Live has ever done. A lot of good fantasy stuff on there. But, yes, I do have fantasy teams, 4 of them. Like I said, I'm cutting down to 3. Actually, I think my first draft is tomorrow. And I'm spending probably a good hour in the bunker before that, just poring over fantasy magazines.
Oh, man, Andrew. All right, we're going to get going for our very first one here for me that I'm trying to get a fantasy thing going. But it's actually a pretty long commitment, though. We're talking about lots of time pouring over. I mean, there's people that say, I only check fantasy for just a short time. It is never a short time. Being on a fantasy team takes a lot of time to try to create the best team possible. And the more the merrier, pretty much. When it comes to profitable fantasy teams, that's definitely something that can, if you spend enough time on, can definitely help you win the fantasy league. And we are here to give you some fantasy advice.
I disagree with you on that. I feel like fantasy football is like March Madness, making the brackets. If you spend too much time thinking about it, you're going to lose. And if you spend no time thinking about it, you're also going to lose. The winner of the league, as unfair as it is usually the person who makes switches out their buys, makes maybe one acquisition per week or two, and then sets their lineup Saturday night. That's usually the person who wins fantasy leagues, at least in my experience.
Coming straight from Andrew, I don't doubt that at all. We see, sometimes the diehard fans lose to the people that just close their eyes, eeny, meeny, miny, mo, as far as drafting and as far as trades and all that good stuff. If you think about it too much, it may not work out for you. One thing that I am thinking about, though, is drafting a Patriot tight end, an undrafted free agent, and he had a very nice preseason. Andrew, is he going to be a part of your fantasy watch as far as later on in the draft?
Well, first of all, we should mention that Patriots tight end's name is Zach. I forget whether it's Sudfield or Studfield.
I think it was Studfield, I believe. We're going to get that answer right now for you.
Yeah, so I feel like he's not going to be part of my plans. First of all, he can probably be picked up on the waiver wire after the draft. So I'll probably end up switching out whichever pick I didn't like for him. So no need to waste a pick on him if he's going to be available afterwards anyways. And secondly, I really need to see him produce in the regular season before I put too much stock in. I mean, last year in the preseason, I was really high on a guy named Rod Streeter for the Oakland Raiders. He, I believe, was far and away the receiving leader last year in preseason. And I remember telling all my buddies, like, oh, you got to watch out for this Rod Streeter guy. He's going to be something. But he turned out to be okay towards the end of the year for the Raiders, but certainly nothing too special, at least not in his first year. So it just goes to show I can't put too much stock in the preseason. I have to try not to do it, but I've learned my lesson.
And a report from ESPN on Zach Sudfield. This is from the Boston Herald saying that people are, including Sal Paolantonio, are going as far as calling him Baby Gronk. He's 6'7", 260 pounds. He caught a touchdown last week in the preseason against the Buccaneers, but in my mind, I just think that you're absolutely right. When you're playing against the 2s and the 3s of an NFL team, it's very easy to create some huge stock for yourself when you don't exactly match up against the 1s. He runs a 4.7 in the 40, which doesn't really help himself either. I think that he's a very nice addition to the Patriots, who have an issue at that position, but I think a free agent may be all that we can get out of Zach Sudfield. But one guy I do indeed think is a little high on stock right now, Andrew, and I mean, I don't blame people for a majority of their career as far as fantasy football goes, saying, hey, this guy has done well for me last season, 2, 3, 4 years ago. I'm going to put him on his fantasy team again. People are putting Maurice Jones-Drew, the Jaguars halfback, at like the 2nd or 3rd round. That is far too high for a team that may be first overall again in this next year's draft.
Well, here's the thing about running backs. All the good ones, all of the quote-unquote sure things, I mean, nothing's ever a sure thing in fantasy, that's why I put it in air quotes, but all of the as close to sure thing first-tier guys, they're all gone in the first round. Whereas with quarterbacks, often you can find starter-worthy guys in the 8th and 9th round. With running backs, they're gone in the first. So what ends up happening is you have to take a chance on a guy like Maurice Jones-Drew at the 2nd round, in the 3rd round. There's Steven Jackson available in the 2nd. You have a lot of guys in questionable situations or with questionable stuff going on with their careers. For Maurice Jones-Drew, it's his age and his injury risk. For Steven Jackson, it's his age. Because there's just nobody left. And running backs are so highly valued in fantasy. I mean, last year, and I mentioned this on the show I did on Monday, the mistake I make every year is waiting too long to pick the 2nd running back, because I subscribe to the regular NFL draft strategy of pick the best player available and don't reach just for a need. But that doesn't work in fantasy for running backs, because if you wait like I did until the 5th round to select your 2nd guy, you're stuck with Monty Ball, you're stuck with Chris Ivory, you're stuck with guys who ultimately you really don't want. Mm-hmm. So that's why Maurice Jones-Drew is ranked as highly as he is. I personally wouldn't touch him with a 10-foot pole this year.
And one guy you do indeed may want to snag as a 2nd running back, if these players do indeed fall, are guys like Chris Johnson and LaShawn McCoy. I'm just thinking off the top of my head here. These guys, if they do indeed fall that low, definitely, as far as receiving options and a home run hitter, those two guys, if one of them fall, picking them up in the 3rd, 4th round would be nothing but good for your fantasy team.
I'm going to disagree with you on one of them.
LaShawn McCoy?
I've always had a friend who, since 2009, has had Chris Johnson on his fantasy team. Yeah. And he says it is just painful. Because he'll have the 1 week where he hits 2 big home runs or goes off for 80-yard touchdowns and you're scoring 30s. And then that's followed by 3 or 4 weeks of 1, 3, -1, 2, another 3. It's not worth it. Don't push yourself through the Chris Johnson experience. I've seen what it does to people. But LaShawn McCoy, I agree with you on that one. I think that the Chip Kelly offense is really going to revitalize.
It's going to highlight LaShawn McCoy more than you think. As far as maybe a guy you pick as a second quarterback, Michael Vick.
Ooh, I like that pick.
He's injury prone, but if he's in the lineup, he's definitely a solid quarterback.
Here's the thing. You could do a lot worse for your backup quarterback than one of the former greatest fantasy football players ever. I mean, I know that he's very far removed from the 04 Michael Vick or the 03 one who's going to score you 40 points in a game, but for a guy that can still get a significant amount of rushing yards, for a guy that can still throw the ball 50 yards on a rope, get rushing TDs, you can do a lot worse for your backup guy. I'd rather have him than somebody like a Joe Flacco or Phillip Rivers, somebody who produces consistently but isn't going to have those wow weeks. And Michael Vick, for all of his travails and all of the things he has going against him, I feel like is still capable of, on any given week, carrying you to victory.
Absolutely. I mean, fantasy football, definitely a topic we can go far more in depth on. We would like to see if you guys indeed play some fantasy football. But, Andrew, being the expert that you are, the fantasy fanatic, and somebody we can definitely count on playing plenty of leagues, I may have you in another one here pretty quick. What is your advice as far as first-time fantasy football players on like how you should draft and guys that you do believe should be drafted if you're selecting later on, guys that could sneak up in this coming NFL season?
Well, here are just a couple of the things that I always draft by. Now, keep in mind that they haven't always produced the results that I would like. Sometimes they do, sometimes they don't. But these are a couple of things that have been either proven to me or I've used and have been effective, so I've now adopted them as kind of my, fantasy drafting for dummies, part of my guide for that. And also somebody should really release fantasy football for dummies, but that's neither here nor there at the moment.
That would be such a nice read. Go ahead.
Yeah, I totally read fantasy sports for dummies. But
it's an art. It's an art how to draft and how to properly, because it's a lot harder than you think to draft properly so you get great guys and you pick your players before other people do at key positions. I mean, obviously, at first you're going to draft a running back. Otherwise, you're going to be, as far as fantasy goes, way behind as far as points if you don't pick a running back.
Especially in today's NFL, you draft the running back first because, I've noticed a change even from 4 or 5 years ago. Very few people are getting 20, 25 carries a game anymore and are consistently producing. So if you have a chance to take a guy like that, you have to do it.
Right. And I think one guy that I do indeed, before we get to here, Andrew, your draft strategy. I just want to quickly touch on this because there are first-time fantasy guys who don't know exactly how to draft properly. Your advice as far as what to expect if you're drafting like in the mid portion of these rounds. What exactly is your advice to how to properly draft and don't let draft night get way in front of you before it's too late?
Well, here's kind of my Cliff's notes on how to draft. First of all, for prep, do 10 or 15 minutes of prep. Don't do hours like I do. That's a bad habit. That's overthinking, but you don't want to underthink it either. Just do 10 or 15 minutes while you're waiting around. Like read a fantasy football magazine or get some printouts.
Fantasy football for dummies.
Yeah, fantasy football for dummies. Then you're going to want 2 good running backs. I've never had a winning team that hasn't had, at some point, 2 good running backs. So prioritize that. You can wait on wide receivers and quarterbacks in today's NFL. You can definitely wait on them. They're deep.
Definitely wait on quarterbacks.
Don't spring at a quarterback early. At least that's what I always do. Let's see. Kickers should always be your last pick. Never spring for the kicker. Let's see. Oh, rookies. Take a chance on rookies. Everybody undervalues them, but, it's just kind of a common practice for some reason for no rookie to ever rise above the 4th or 5th round. I mean, I got Robert Griffin III in the 10th or 11th last year, Russell Wilson with the last pick. You definitely want to take a chance on those rookies. And finally, my last tip that I always try to kind of draft by, it doesn't always work out. I like to avoid players in bad situations or on bad teams, like your Maurice Jones-Drews or Steven Jackson when he was on St. Louis.
Some mock drafts have C.J. Spiller way up in the first round. He may not even get many carries. With Fred Jackson.
He split with Fred Jackson when they were both healthy last year. Then, obviously, Spiller went down for some time. But I feel like he's a home run hitter. You want C.J. Spiller on your team.
Very interesting points by Andrew Goldstein. Fantasy, obviously one of those big-time parts of football. It's hard to predict exactly what the NFL is going to do, so it may be a good thing to have a couple fantasy teams. That'd be nice to see one of them definitely work out. One thing,
it's a social experience, too. Like, I've grown closer to pretty much everybody in my fantasy league just by playing with them.
I mean, with people... I mean, when you have people like Andrew who have no friends, it's definitely an outlet for you to have multiple fantasy leagues.
I have, like, 2 friends.
Oh, really? Wow, yeah, 2 friends.
Yeah, I got Markel and Liam on the show last week, so that, like 2 days ago, so that's 2. And then I got another one coming on Friday, so that's 3. I have at least 3 friends.
3 friends.
At least 3.
SpongeBob would be proud. He had a lot of friends. But anyways, yeah, that was a weird thing to say. But we're going to go on here. Definitely, I'm just looking through mock drafts just real quick here. And we're taking a look at a guy that I think is ranked, is highly underranked. And, I mean, I may be a homer here going with San Diego. But a guy who should be taken in the 5th round, Ryan Matthews. I think that's a little too low for a guy that's really proven his worth in the preseason. I don't know if you would take a guy that low as your second running back, but Andrew, would you agree with taking a guy like Ryan Matthews? I mean, you mentioned home run hitters and guys that can produce if your starter gets hurt. Ryan Matthews could be the case.
I'm kind of cautious
on that one,
Matthews. Running backs who have suffered injuries that have sidelined them for more than 6 games at a time at any point in their career, my rule is always be cautious about those guys.
Absolutely.
Because injuries have a way of lingering with running backs more so than any other position, I've noticed, because they're constantly taking contact on every single play. I mean, they're blocking, catching, running, they're doing a variety of things. And Ryan Matthews has been injured a lot over the last couple of years to the point where I don't necessarily feel comfortable taking him. I mean, that could come back to bite me. He obviously still has a lot of athletic ability, but I just don't like injury risks, especially at the running back position.
It seems like everyone has some sort of injury risk. I mean, a guy that should be taken very high in the first round is Arian Foster, who has had some very under the radar, but he has had some injury concerns over his brief but very impressive career. It's hard. Once you get into this debate, it's hard to just say, look, let me just take the guy I believe should win. That may be the best advice, ladies and gentlemen. Take the guy that you think based off of just common knowledge that will win. I mean, at the end of the day, putting too much into it, soaking yourself in fantasy may not be the best situation for you.
What do you mean when you say, maybe I just need a little more clarification on this, but what do you mean when you say take the guy who you believe will win? Like take the guy on the winning team?
That's based off of you and your thinking. If you believe that, if your philosophy goes a certain way, sometimes it's just a case of trial and error. We can go hours as far as trying to figure out what may be the best situation. But at the end of the day, if your gut feeling says, look, take this guy, sometimes that just may be the right answer. Because in fantasy, there is no telling the exact production of these NFL players. Andrew, do you agree?
Yeah, I agree. I mean, when you get right down to it, fantasy football is kind of controlled chaos. If you had to liken it to a real sporting event, like I said, it's like March Madness. There are certain things that almost always come true, like in March Madness, 16 seeds never beaten a 1 seed. And in fantasy football, the first pick is almost always going to give you a very good amount of production. But at the end of the day, you just never know what's going to happen. It's not a total crapshoot, but it's at least kind of a crapshoot.
It's a league of parity.
It's fun.
Absolutely. We're moving on the NFL Goal Line Live as well. We're just 2 weeks away from our very first regular season action, which means get your fantasy drafts together, and also get your chin straps on that. Get your chin straps ready, because we are just about set for NFL regular season action. And one thing that we're trying to give you guys here is all of the pre-season information that you guys definitely need to know. Preseason week number 2 is in the books, by the way. Andrew, your takeaway from this week, where we saw a number of blowouts across the National Football League, including one in Seattle. We already touched on it earlier. Your takeaway from week number 2.
I really don't have much of a takeaway from week number 2. Like I mentioned earlier in the show, I used to be one of those people that tried to break down everything that was happening in the preseason, but I'm kind of trying to do the opposite this year. I'm not putting too much stock into it. Teams aren't using the offensive and defensive schemes that they're going to be using on day one. In fact, coaches go to great lengths to try and disguise what they're going to do and make it completely different from the plans they have for that week 1 game. I just don't feel like I can take away anything yet.
Well, one thing you know for sure is that in 2 NFL locker rooms, we have a for sure quarterback for week number 1. Philadelphia.
We have 2 quarterback battles resolved. That's a good point.
Yeah, and it seems to me that the Eagles may be in a pretty nice situation this year, where Michael Vick apparently, by head and heels, was by far a better quarterback than Nick Foles, who had a pretty nice preseason in and of itself. Chip Kelly said that he was going to let this quarterback battle play out before he decides a winner. 2 weeks in, do you think, Andrew, that this guy was just so much better and the sure, clear-cut guy for week 1 that Chip Kelly says, look, this guy is just flat out a much better quarterback, and I want him on the field week 1?
Well, I feel like Chip Kelly was predisposed to picking Michael Vick because Michael Vick kind of better fit what he wanted to do with regards to that whole much-touted Oregon scheme and needed fast players, and Michael Vick is obviously a very potent runner, and Nick Foles isn't. So I feel like if it was a tie, and it wasn't, but if it were to be a tie, Chip Kelly would give the edge to Michael Vick. And besides, Michael Vick has seniority, and coaches tend to give edges in quarterback battles to seniority when it's not an exciting rookie like Robert Griffin or Andrew Luck.
I don't really believe in that, though, by the way. I always...
Oh, I don't either. I'm just saying some NFL coaches tend to do it.
And I think that may be the Achilles heel for Rex Ryan and his job, where he's going with, it seems to be Mark Sanchez. That's not resolved yet. But they seem to be going with Mark Sanchez when Geno Smith, maybe not now, but I think in a couple years, if you stick with him, he may be a better quarterback. Now, that's not saying anything at all. I mean, the bar is set so low for Mark Sanchez.
Don't rub it in.
But I do think that many NFL teams would be better off choosing a younger guy or a guy with less experience. I experienced this last season. I not only play football, but I also play track. I ran in the exact same time as a really, really nice 400-meter runner, and this guy is head and heels. I was a senior in high school running the 400. He was a freshman in high school running the 400. Same time heading into not only finals but also CIF play. And the coaches had to make a decision. It was either me, who runs a 49.9, or him, who runs a 49.9. At the end of the day, they went with the freshman, and he turned out to be our second best runner. Me and him were tied for the number 4 spot. He ended up being our second best runner, and he may have been the single piece that brought us to a state in the 4x4 relay team. So I don't know how that ties into the NFL, but
I'm
I
not
think
sure how it ties in either. That's an
well, I
entirely
know.
different
I was trying to get your
situation.
input on this because the younger player has a lot more time to develop, and my thought of throwing you into the fire and how that will ruin a quarterback, in my mind, I don't think that happens as often as we believe.
But don't forget that when you're in track, you don't have a playbook to memorize. You don't have to call out audibles with 60,000 fans screaming in your ear. It's different when you're an NFL quarterback because when you have a viable older guy, a relatively older guy, maybe in his 30s, he's kind of been around the NFL. He started. He knows the playbook better than the rookie, purely out of experience most of the time and just familiarity with it. And he's going to be better adapted to communicate information to his teammates, to remember precisely what route Deshaun Jackson was running, whether it's up and in or just a straight go pattern. He's just in a better position to do all the things that you're not going to read about in the box score. And I feel like with your situation, those variables don't come into play.
Absolutely. Obviously, college game doesn't compare at all to the NFL. But one thing I do want to say is, and obviously this situation is not going to happen every team where you have Robert Griffin in your back pocket, but you may be better off with a situation where you can slowly ease a guy in. Robert Griffin was a guy who was throwing the ball 10 to 15 times a game. Same situation with the Mark Sanchez-led Jets when he first entered the league. It can go north or south for you, but if you can ease a guy in, run the ball more than you pass the ball, in a passing league, it may not be as hard to go with the rookie when it just seems to me that there's so many rules that favor the QB. But one thing I do want to get to before we wrap up here on the NFL Goal Line Live, go on and on about the quarterbacks as well. We'll get going in a couple of weeks with all 32 teams. But will we see a team in the coming years in Los Angeles, Andrew? Do you believe that that's at all a reality? And could a team like Oakland be a team that transfers down south to Los Angeles?
I feel like we will eventually see a team in Los Angeles, but I'm not sure if it's going to happen in the next 4 or 5 years. I think we're looking farther down the road, maybe closer to around a decade, because what the NFL is doing, it's what the NBA is doing with Seattle, is it's keeping it open as a potential market, and it's kind of using that as sort of leverage against its owners. They're saying, if you don't draw people to your stadium, if you don't achieve the kind of success that you promised your fans, there's a chance that you're going to be forced to sell the team who's going to move somebody to LA. Like, it's this sort of thing that like I said, that the NBA is doing with Seattle, where it kind of danced with relocating Sacramento and forcing the Maloofs to sell their team. I feel like we're eventually going to see a team there. I mean, logic dictates it's the second largest market in the United States. No duh, that's a great place for a sports team.
Yeah.
And I feel like it's going to be Oakland. They were, I believe, last in the league in attendance last year. They haven't had a good thing happen to them since Rich Gannon was their quarterback. Time's right.
Obviously, I believe that it just is a matter of time, because if we have a team in Jacksonville and in Buffalo but not in Los Angeles, I think the NFL is doing some huge mistake. We have Cameron Sadeghi, a man who's also a prominent figure here on national sports. The Cameron Sadeghi Show. He's now on In the Paint, along with other key shows on Spreaker.com's national sports. Make sure to check him out. Cameron Sadeghi joining us live. Welcome inside the NFL Goal Line Live, Cameron.
Thanks, Nick and Andrew. I think the team that David Akers is on, Detroit Lions, would be a good fit too in LA. But look, all joking aside, I think the Chargers would probably be the best fit because they have some big issues with Qualcomm, and I think it would be a really nice fit in LA. Exciting brand of football. See Philip Rivers swinging all over the yard, and Dwight Freeney getting some big sacks. Applying some pressure, so it can be a lot of fun with Mike McCoy, Philip Rivers. Make it interesting, get to the wild card a few years. Give it a run at the AFC Championship. I think the city of LA would be mesmerized by those storylines and the drama. I think they'd love it if the old LA Chargers come back. I really want the LA Chargers to come back and be revived. I do live near the LA area, so I want to see football in LA badly. So.
Hey, Cameron, you're an NBA guy, right?
Oh, he hung up on us. But he is an NBA guy. Actually, what were you going to ask him?
I was going to ask him which did he think would happen first? Seattle gets a team for basketball, or LA gets a team for football?
I honestly think that LA would get the team for football first because it's just such a pressing issue, and heck, the stadium's almost fully built by this point. But the thing I also want to add with Cameron's point here is that not only the Raiders but the Chargers have history inside the LA Coliseum. They've both been in Los Angeles at their certain points. But one thing I do want to add is that one thing that favors the Chargers over the Raiders is that they have a lot more stability in the front office. And frankly, a team or a city like Los Angeles would much rather see the Chargers, who are a winning product. They were a winning football team for quite some time just this past decade. Things have gone south for the Chargers. But I just do believe that if you're going to have any team in Los Angeles in a high-powered market, a team that's going to fill that stadium is going to be the Chargers. Now, Oakland, no matter what, in the next few years, they need to make something change because that is not a good place for any coach or any team, any player wants to be in Oakland. But in my mind, I do believe that San Diego would be the team to move up just a couple hours north of Los Angeles. Do you agree, Andrew?
I agree. I feel like the Chargers would definitely be big draw in Los Angeles, but as for their front office stability, I don't know how it's going to be under Tom Telesco, but the last 9 or 10 years, they have been under the reign of probably, I'm not going to say the most incompetent GM in the league, but definitely bottom 5.
Well, incompetent.
A.J. Smith was abominable.
I don't know about that. He actually developed, towards the end, yes, but he developed one of the most formidable teams in the NFL. He chose a number of undrafted free agents that ended up being really good players for our team. Everything went south, but for the time being, that was a 14-2 team in 2006 with counted I think it was either 11 or 12 Pro Bowlers in one season. That's not a bottom 5 GM in my mind. But towards the end of the year, point taken, a terrible GM. Tom Telesco.
Give you that the first half of his tenure was very good. It's kind of been so long ago that I forgot about it. But the second half, like everything from, I'm going to say, 2007, 2008.
Oh, just 2006. A.J. Smith was in the party of sending Marty out the door, bringing in Norv Turner, and we all know how that...
Exactly. That was probably one of the worst coaching changes began
the huge downward spiral for that team. And then also, not to mention, I mean, I don't want to place too much into Tom Telesco right now, but not only does he have a terrible situation to try to resurrect, but already I'm seeing some of our draft picks not exactly live up to the hype that once was. Manti Te'o, the huge hype out of the second-round pick, he's injured, probably going to be out week 1, too. He has an injured ankle. He's going to be out for some time. We drafted what was supposed to be one of our cornerbacks because we're very thin on that side. Steve Williams, he's out for the year with an injury. DJ Fluker, our first-round pick, isn't exactly living up to the hype. And Keenan Allen, our third-round selection, I think he only has 1 or 2 catches all the preseason. I don't want to place too much on the GM, but it seems to me if this management doesn't help itself, I don't know if we see San Diego moving either. It may even be a team like Jacksonville or just a team that's been in the ruins for a lot longer than San Diego.
Well, the problem with Jacksonville is you have to move them into another division out of the South and into the West, and that might affect how everything is currently aligned in the NFL. So if the NFL had their druthers, they'd probably pick a team that's already in either the AFC or NFC West. And as for A.J. Smith, all I can say about him is he actually earned himself the nickname not just among fans towards the end of his tenure, but among some respected and anonymous NFL executives as the Lord of No Rings. People actually called him that.
Oh, man, you can place the same mark for a guy like Marty Schottenheimer. I mean, that was the motivation, but I think what may ruin a team like Buffalo or Chicago is you take away a man with no rings and place him with a man who's not going to get you any rings. And Mark Trestman and for Chicago and the new coach for the Buffalo Bills, I'm forgetting his name, but Doug Marrone. I think those are 2 coaches that will just go down south in the next few years. As we're wrapping up here in the NFL Goal Line Live, I promise, one last question from Cameron Sadeghi. Will David Akers be a Pro Bowl kicker? Jokes aside, David Akers, a Pro Bowl kicker. I already got my 2 guys that are going to make the Pro Bowl, and Sebastian Janikowski, and then the man for the Vikings, Blair Walsh. 2 really fantastic kickers. Is David Akers a Pro Bowl player?
Well, first of all, let me just say that, like I stick up for offensive linemen, I love kickers too, and I don't think they get enough credit. But David Akers, I feel like his time is just about up. He had a fantastic career. He was once a Pro Bowl kicker, but he's just missed too many key kicks, especially last season, for me to really believe in him. But one other guy in the NFC besides Blair Walsh that I have my eye on is the Rams kicker, Legatron, Greg Zuerlein.
Oh, he's good too.
I mean, 60-yard field goals pretty consistently. He's young. He's got an awesome nickname. He kicks in a dome. What more could you want out of a kicker?
An offense that will attempt a lot of field goals in the Rams. We actually have one more caller, though, by the way. Robert Dieters joining us. I promised you we'd wrap up here. But, Robert, what is your question? Oh, man. Cameron Sadeghi asking if Akers is a good tackler. But
Akers is a good tackler. I mean, it's better than me, but I guess that's all I could say about that.
I don't even know about that. But the only kicker I thought was good at tackling was the man formerly for the Cowboys. His name was David Bueller, a really nice tackler. He's a tough guy, formerly a linebacker. But obviously, that point aside, Robert Dieters, thank you for joining us. One trade we do want to mention before the show is over, A.J. Jenkins moving from the Niners over to the Chiefs, and then the Chiefs exchanging with their own first-round disappointment, Jonathan Baldwin, who had 20 catches last year. A.J. Jenkins, not a single reception all of the 2012 season. Robert Dieters, Commissioner of National Sports, joining us on the NFL Goal Line Live. Your thoughts?
Thanks so much, and Andrew as well for letting me be on the show, for being on your show, and I like to say about the trade is this is a good trade for both sides. The Niners really do need a wide receiver. I mean, this guy only got 20 catches for Baldwin. But you look at Jenkins, and this guy hasn't really produced whatsoever, and he was struggling to make a spot on the Niners roster right now. And I think he's going to have a better time in Kansas City. You know, I'm looking forward to Baldwin. I can't wait to see what he can do on the field for the Niners. I know he's a little inconsistent as I saw against the Chiefs and the Niners, he dropped some passes, but I think with the new system for him, I think with Colin Kaepernick, I think it could really work out because him and Anquan Bolden already have made good connections together. And also answering the David Akers question, last year was a struggling year for David Akers. In Detroit, I'd be really interested to see how he does for Detroit. But I don't think he'll be a Pro Bowler again. If you think David Akers is a good tackler, that's your opinion, but I don't think he's a good tackler.
I mean, we just ask every question on NFL Goal Line Live. Robert Dieters, thank you for joining us. And one final question for you, Robert. Do you think there will be a team in L.A.? We've ventured this question for a majority of the last 10 minutes. Do you think that if there also is a team in L.A., what will it be? The primary contenders are the Jaguars, Oakland Raiders, and, of course, San Diego Chargers.
Nick, I'm going to have to go to the San Diego Chargers. I think, San Diego is coming to the point where, you only got the Padres and you only got the Chargers. I think the San Diego Padres should be moving soon as well. I think that team is, in its moving ways. And if San Diego Chargers leave, I think the Padres would leave as well. Oakland, I mean, that's a pretty good possibility because, they're not a very good team whatsoever. They used to be in LA. Jacksonville, that's a good fight too, but I think with one of those contenders, I would probably go with San Diego.
Robert Dieters, Commissioner of National Sports. Catch him on Deet Sports Talk, along with a show that he hosts alongside Stephen Hughes as well. Thank you, Robert, for calling in. And the NFL Goal Line Live wrapping up here. One thing I do want to add, though, before we go, is that what may change your opinions here is that the Oakland Raiders, especially when they travel to San Diego to play their divisional opponent, the Chargers, obviously, they have a very loyal fan base, probably one of the most loyal in the National Football League, because this has been a terrible franchise. And despite the attendance being so low, this is a team fan base that travels very well. It's the black hole. It's just all of the notoriety. The past decade, I would have been bailing out on this team, but there are still so many loyal fans in that fan base. And also, real quick, before we go, I just want to shed some light on this A.J. Jenkins and Jonathan Baldwin situation, where I believe this is a good situation for both teams. A clean slate, and I think the Niners may have won in this trade. They just seem to always be a step ahead. They acquire Anquan Bolden for it was a 6th-round pick. Are you kidding me? They just seem to be doing awfully well as far as acquiring talent again and again. Your thoughts, Andrew, as we wrap up here on the Jonathan Baldwin and A.J. Jenkins trade?
I feel like it was a pretty even trade. Both of them were, like you said, disappointments at their previous place of employment, and I feel like this is just a fresh start. They both needed a change of scenery, and they both got it, and here's to hopefully success for both of them. But before we go, I just wanted to take the opportunity to kind of advertise the other show that I do on the National Sports Station. AM Sports Live aired our fantasy football special with our first ever guest this past Monday. Definitely go listen to that if you want some sound fantasy football expertise. We're going to be doing another show this Friday. We're talking A-Rod, Breaking Bad, a lot of good stuff. We're hopefully going to be doing shows every Tuesday and Friday, and like us on Facebook, AM Sports Live, Twitter at AM Sports Live 1, and email any questions you have to amsportslive@gmail.com.
Catch Andrew Goldstein on AM Sports Live along with NFL Gold Line Live and many other shows for all of our main contestants on the National Sports Radio Station. This has been another presentation of Spreaker.com's National Sports, and we'll make sure to catch you guys next Tuesday night. We've made a new time, apparently. It's been Tuesday night at around 7:30 to 8 o'clock Pacific, and then 10:30 to 11 o'clock Eastern Standard Time. Thank you guys for joining us. Week 3 action in the exhibition season is getting going. Make sure to get your fantasy leagues covered along with all of the up-to-date action. Catch it here on the NFL Gold Line Live with Nick and Phil as we wrap up on NFL Goal Line Live. Thank you guys for joining us.
Nick and Andrew.
Nick
Who was
and
your last guy?
Oh, jeez.
Come on, man.
Oh, man, you have no friends, and now add me to that list. We'll see.
Unbelievable. You see what I have to deal with this guy?
Oh, man, we're a loving, kind, friendly, compassionate relationship here we have with Nick on the NFL Goal Line Live, Andrew included. Thank you guys for joining us, and we'll catch you next Tuesday night.
See you later, everybody.
Live from Los Angeles, we thank you for listening to another presentation of the National Sports Radio Station on Spreaker.com.